Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. It's a bit of a dreary morning here in Maine. We will be going to the shooting range a little bit later this afternoon. I think it's going to clear up some and try to get some more shooting videos done. But this morning I'm going to take a look at something that we're not going to be shooting. This does not belong to me. It doesn't belong to my dad. It's something that we're helping a friend move. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not even sure what cartridge this revolver is chambered in. But what we're going to be looking at, I'm sure you already know because you've read the title down below, is an early, well, not extremely early, this is 1880s vintage, Smith & Wesson 44 caliber top break revolver. This belongs to the same gentleman who owns the 1886 Winchester that we took a look at a few months ago. And he had some really fabulous firearms. Not much of a firearms guy, but he had some really interesting guns. And I want to take a look at this one while it's still in our possession. This, just so everyone knows, will be going to Morphy's auction house up in Fairfield, Maine relatively soon. So if you like this revolver and you want to keep an eye out for it, that 1886 Winchester lever action that I reviewed a few months ago is also going up to Morphy's, as well as an early 94 Winchester in 30 Winchester centerfire. It's early 20th century, I think maybe 19-teens or 1920s vintage. I actually didn't take a very close look at that rifle. And a couple of other guns are also going to be going to Morphy's. My dad has a very early Inland M1 carbine with a Type 1 barrel band, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's a couple other guns that are going to Morphy's as well. But this revolver is what we're going to be looking at today. And I am not a huge Smith & Wesson collector. I don't know an awful lot about early Smith & Wessons. So I did a little bit of research this morning using Elmer Keith's excellent book, Six Guns by Keith. If you're not familiar with this book, it's very, very worthwhile getting. But if you're going to use it to try to do research, it can be a little bit frustrating. Elmer Keith was a brilliant revolver expert and a really great writer. It does have a table of contents in the front of the book, but there is no index in the back of the book. And finding the information you want in this thing can be a process of trial and error, which is why I have a couple of pieces of paper in here. But I'm going to give you some information, what I know from looking in this book. I'm sure I'm not going to get everything right here. Certainly, there are some of you watching this video who know an awful lot more about these, and I certainly welcome your comments down below. As near as I can tell, this is, according to Elmer Keith, the revolver model, which is featured at the top of page 39 in his book, and he describes it as the 44 single action model number 3 new model Smith & Wesson. Many of you are probably familiar with the Smith & Wesson Schofield, the earlier Russian 44 Smith & Wesson that was made for the Russian government, and a few were made for the Turkish government, and I think some of them were sold here as well. Those came in just around the turn of the 1870s. I think the 44 Russian was like 1867 or 1869, and the Schofield was 1871. But this revolver has patent dates of 1865, 1869, 1871, 1879, and 1880. So this is a later model. We've got a 6-inch barrel. Some of the earlier revolvers either had a 7-inch barrel or a 6.5-inch barrel. This one's got a 6-inch barrel. As far as I know, this is factory nickel plating, and it is largely intact. This revolver is in pretty nice condition, considering the fact that the family, at least the anecdotal family history, says that this revolver went to the gold fields somewhere I don't know if it was California. I don't know if it was Alaska. I believe we're going to try to get a letter of provenance from the owners before this goes off to auction. But I don't know that information off the top of my head. It wouldn't have been the 1849 gold rush, obviously, because this revolver was made about 30 years later, but or 35 years maybe later. But it definitely went off to the gold fields. It's been used and carried quite a bit. There is some nickel wear at the butt, as one might expect. There's some holster wear near the muzzle. There is the evidence of old corrosion around the breech end of the barrel from obviously firing black powder cartridges and not cleaning it as quickly as necessary. But the chambers are fairly bright. The bore is fair, I would say. The rifling is still very much intact, but the bore is a little bit frosty. The revolver came with a flap holster. This is ostensibly the holster that was used by the gentleman who took this out to go stake his gold claim. It's a fairly typical flap cavalry-style holster. It was definitely made for a Smith & Wesson like this. There are no markings on this holster whatsoever. I don't know if it's a Smith & Wesson holster. I don't know what custom maker made this holster, but it's in pretty nice condition. There's a little bit of wear around the hole where the stud goes through to catch the flap. It has a sort of serpentine border pattern stamped into the leather, also on the flap, but around the holster, part of the holster itself. And it has a couple of little florets, little flowers stamped in on the corners. So it's a very nice holster. The only marking on it is a 6.5 on the belt loop. So I'm assuming that this holster was made for a Smith & Wesson with a 6.5-inch barrel. As I said, this one's got a 6-inch barrel, so it's probably just a little bit longer than it needs to be, but it worked perfectly fine, I would say, for 140 years. So, a closer look at the revolver. This does have an auto ejector, as you can see. When you open the cylinder star, the ejector star raises, lifting the cases out of the chambers, and then quickly retracts, and that's supposed to sort of eject all of the cases. They should fall around you at your feet. It's not great if you're a reloader, but it's certainly a lot faster than loading a single-action Army or Colt single-action Army of the same time period. This is single action. There were double action versions of these that came out later on, but this one's strictly single action. I was not familiar with these at all. The hammer basically has 3 positions. You've got full cock, in which the cylinder is locked and the revolver is ready to fire. When you drop the hammer, there's actually a little notch in the top of the hammer here that catches the cylinder catch and prevents the revolver from inadvertently opening. Now, the interesting thing about this, as opposed to Colt single-action Armies, you're probably very familiar with the basically unwritten rule that you can only carry an original Colt single-action Army with 5 chambers loaded in the cylinder. It's just not safe to carry 6 loaded chambers. This revolver, you could in fact carry 6 cartridges loaded into the chambers in the cylinders because you've got a rebounding hammer here. When you drop the hammer goes fully forward and the firing pin protrudes. But as soon as the gun has fired, the hammer rebounds slightly. You release the trigger and the hammer is locked back. It can't possibly go forward. I'm not familiar with how that mechanism works, but I think that this revolver is perfectly safe to carry with 6 rounds in the cylinder. So there's a half cock position in which you can open the cylinder and eject the old cases and reload. And in the half cock position, the cylinder can simply freewheel. There's no ratcheting mechanism to keep it from turning backwards. It can turn in either direction. I don't really know what the purpose of that is, other than, I guess, to check and see if it's loaded, because obviously you're not loading through a side gate like you would on a Colt. And once again, in the fully locked position, the cylinder is locked, and with the hammer down and at rest, the cylinder is locked. As I said, as far as I know, this nickel plate finish is a factory original. I don't have any reason to believe that it's not. I'm not going to invest the money. We're not going to invest the money in getting a factory letter unless the owners want to do so to increase the sale value of the revolver. I don't know if it's really worthwhile or not. But as far as I know, factory nickel finish. The trigger guard, the trigger, the hammer, the cylinder latch are all case hardened. There's still quite a bit of color case hardening visible on the hammer. The trigger is a little bit more worn. You can still see some traces of color case hardening. But overall, it's in very good condition. Although as I said, there was some corrosion here, which caused peeling of the nickel. There's no pitting that I can see. The inside of the revolver, from what I can see, is in really excellent condition. I don't see any significant corrosion or really undue wear anywhere inside the revolver. This is just a fantastic thing, and I wish I could buy this myself, but it's way, way, way outside my price range, I'm sure. The one strange thing, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is there is no indication anywhere on this revolver that of which cartridge this revolver is chambered in. We do have the standard Smith & Wesson markings up here with patent dates and everything on the top of the barrel rib, but there's nothing to indicate which cartridge this revolver is chambered in. I'm guessing it's .44 Russian. This revolver predates the introduction of the .44 Special. I think that came out right around the turn of the 20th century and was introduced with the first swing-out cylinder Smith & Wessons. It definitely seems to be .44 caliber. I've tried inserting a .45 long Colt into one of the chambers, and it will not even enter the chamber. I'm not going to slug the barrel because, again, this isn't my revolver. I'm not going to go hammering lead slugs through the barrel. I'm assuming it's .44 Russian. I don't know what other possibilities it could be. I mean, I originally thought maybe it was .45 Schofield, but I think if it was in .45 Schofield, a 45 Colt cartridge would at least start to go into the chamber. So that's a bit of a mystery, but I'm sure it will be solved before the revolver goes up for sale. I'm sure Morphy's auction house is not going to sell the revolver as having an unknown caliber. Again, I would imagine somebody will probably get a letter of provenance from Smith & Wesson before this revolver goes up for sale. The serial number is a little unusual, at least to me. It looks like just a 3-digit serial number, 746. There is a matching serial number on the rear of the cylinder there, just above one of the legs of the ejector star. The grips are the very basic hard rubber with the Smith & Wesson logo at the top. The grips are in really excellent shape. So often with these older revolvers with hard rubber grips, you're going to have major chips or cracks. There's one small chip at the heel of the butt here. There was obviously, maybe the revolver was dropped, maybe it was used as a hammer, who knows, but there's a bit of a dent in the grip frame and a very tiny chip there. Otherwise, the grips are in really excellent condition. They're a little bit worn. They're more worn on the right side than they are on the left. Presumably, that's where the grips get more wear from the palm of your hand. So again, I'm not a Smith & Wesson collector. I'm not a Smith & Wesson expert. I don't know a whole lot else I can tell you about this revolver. Elmer Keith has to say about it, and hopefully I'm not violating any copyrights by reading out of this. It says, in 1879, Smith & Wesson perfected and brought out a new Model 44, designed and improved from the Russian and Schofield models. It was with this arm that Ira Payne established his many records and shot exhibitions all over Europe as well as in America. This new Smith & Wesson single-action 44 proved one of the finest target arms of the day and did much to start the sport of revolver target shooting in this country. The National Rifle Association inaugurated a revolver match in their program in 1886. Ira Payne and W.W. Bennett, as well as Fred Bennett, were some of the top revolver shots of the day. And in a big match of 100 shots per day for 6 straight days, Fred Bennett was finally crowned champion revolver shot of America with a score of 5,093. During the match, W.W. Bennett ran up a score for 100 shots of 914, and Ira Payne ran one for 100 shots of 904. When this 50-yard shooting was done with black powder, cleaning was allowed between 5-shot strings or by running a brush through the bore after each shot, and it is exceptionally fine shooting even today. The book goes on and on, but I'm not going to bore you with it. I would definitely suggest, if you do not own a copy of Six Guns by Keith, you get your hands on one of these, either buy it or if you have a friend who has one, borrow it. It is a great read. Again, maybe not the greatest research book, because it can be quite difficult to find specific content in here. But so I guess that's about all I have to say about this third model, new model Smith & Wesson in presumably 44. It's a beautiful revolver. It will be going up for sale soon at Morphy, so if you're interested in it, keep an eye out for that. I don't know exactly when. As far as I know, we haven't even contacted Morphy's yet, so I don't know which auction it would end up in or whatever. But keep an eye out for that, and also for the 1886 Winchester that I reviewed recently as well. So I'm going to be making some more videos this afternoon. Those will actually include some shooting. When I post this video and when I post those videos, I hope to see all of you here then. Later, guys.